2, 1. Sorry, that was horrible.
That's fantastic.
That
That's
was
going in the
great.
intro. Welcome to A Spirited Life. I'm Mark.
I'm Christine.
And this week we're going to be talking a little bit about building a budget. And we're actually going to walk through building a budget for you. And we're also going to talk about how we use our emergency fund.
Our whiskey of the week is going to be a great option if you are on a budget. And we're also going to talk about what filled our spirits.
We want to live a spirited life. We're documenting our journey towards financial independence while balancing that with living in the present and enjoying our time in the journey. While we want to work towards financial independence, there's no guarantee for what tomorrow will bring. So we don't want to wait to enjoy our lives because tomorrow isn't promised. We want to share our journey to help keep ourselves intentional and accountable, and we invite you to come along with us as we work towards living a spirited life. Every week we like to pick a whiskey that goes along with our theme this week. Since we're talking about budgets and budgeting, we figured that we would talk about a whiskey that is a great whiskey that fits into many budgets and is a great value. Evan Williams Bottled in Bond is often talked about as one of potentially the best values in bourbon because it is a Bottled in Bond product. And this particular bottle at a 1.75 liter for us costs $32. And if you buy a regular 750 milliliter bottle, it's like usually somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 to $18. So great value for the quality of the bourbon inside. And Christine, can you tell us a little bit about that bourbon?
Yeah, Evan Williams is Bottled in Bond is a Bottled in Bond, which means it's at least 4 years old. If not, it could be a little older.
Mm-hmm.
The proof is 100 proof, which is a great value for being on a budget because at 100 proof, you could either drink it neat or it works really well as a mixer.
Yeah. And this particular offering from them does have a good amount of complexity. It does have a nice flavor profile. So it's great to drink on its own, but you certainly can use it as a mixer. And because of the cost that you're paying at $15 to $18 a bottle, you're not going to feel bad about putting this into a Manhattan or an old fashioned or some other cocktail. And so if you're looking for something where you want a versatile bottle that you can drink neat or that you can use as a mixer and not have to go out buying several different bottles, this is a nice one that you can buy that is basically an all-around hitter. So let's get into it.
On the nose. I get the oaky. Is it like oaky? It's like a cherry oaky I get.
That's one of the things that actually always surprises me about Evan Williams Bottled in Bond is even though it's Bottled in Bond, it's minimum 4 years. I think it's probably a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is because it does have a significant bit of oak profile on here. It's got a little bit of that nice richness to it, some nice depth to it.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. Great experience.
It's like, I don't know if it's what I'm getting on my palate today, but I get like it's going to sound really weird separate, but it tastes really good together. A peach corn.
Okay. I can
Which
see
you would
that.
think that they sound really weird together,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like the sweet corn with it's like sweet corn on the cob that has been roasted over fruit wood, like wood that has like a fruit base to it.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. And I actually can get both of those notes that you just described, and it's not off-putting at all. It does have a nice entry as far as it's got a little bit of fruitiness up front. In the mid palate, you start to get some of the more traditional bourbon notes, like some of the a little bit of caramel, a little bit of vanilla, and then the oak really kicks in. And you start to get the proof mid to late palate, and that's where that 100 proof really kicks in. And then you get a little bit of oakiness. Not a super long finish, but again, for the experience that you're getting for
And the cost, it's a good
$16 to $18 bottle, yeah.
It's
at
a
that
very
cost?
good. It's a very good pour for the cost. You don't feel like you're skimping out on anything.
No, like there is a lot here inside of something that is a very reasonable price overall. Do get a little bit of the little bit of sourness on the mid to late finish, and I think that's the oak coming through. It's not an off-putting sourness to me though. Like
No,
it is that oaky sourness that I would look for. That's just a part of the experience that lets me know it's got a little bit of age on it. Anything else that you're getting on your second sip?
A candy corn. I'm trying to figure out what it is that's coating my tongue.
I can't tell you what that is.
I don't know.
You'll have to figure it out.
It's like right there. It's like 30 minutes into recording, I'll go be like, and it's this. And you can be like, what the heck? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that was about the sip that I had a little bit ago. It finally just popped into my head.
One other note I am getting now is I'm getting a little bit of leatheriness to it. And I think that actually stands out a little bit more. And it was something interesting that I noticed when I got the first time that I had this. I was surprised at getting a bit of that leather note on a bottle that costs this much, because usually you would get more of those deeper age leather and oak notes on something that would be, significantly more aged. And so that is one of the things that I think is a little surprising that I get a little bit of. Again, that just talks about the quality of this bottle.
So what it is that just popped into my head is Murphy's oil soap. Have you ever had to clean a saddle?
I have not, but I do know that smell, and I know what a saddle smells like after you've cleaned it.
So when I've had to clean our saddles, it has it because it has like an oiliness to it, but it has like a sweet, but like the leather. Once you said leather, I'm like, oh, it's Murphy. It's like I just got done cleaning the saddle.
Yeah, and so you're probably getting a little bit of like
the leathery, that grainy,
note.
like it's like dusty, grainy, oily, and then that sweetness.
So yeah, absolutely fantastic pour overall, especially for the price, but really good on its own, just in terms of it's a quality product that has at least a bit of decent age on it, has a lot of different flavor notes, a lot of different complexity that's available, and you're not gonna break the bank if you're looking for something that gives you a lot of flexibility. I know a lot of people talk about this as their everyday pour, and I think that makes sense given the quality and given the price and how that fits into people's budgets.
Yeah, and I think about it too, like on a budget, if you're going somewhere and you want to bring a bottle, bringing this, which is a budget bottle, you're not going to be like, oh, like you're not bringing the Natty Light of whiskey.
Right.
To the event, like you're still bringing a solid pour. It's not like you're like that college student that's trying to scrape together nickels for the cheapest drink.
Right, and you certainly won't mind leaving it there if you leave it there with your friends or something along those lines. So certainly something, as you said, it fits within the budget. It's something that you can take with you and things like that. And so I think that's a good segue in terms of talking about budgeting and talking about our emergency fund, because we actually had that in our budget. And we'll talk a little bit about how, since that fits in with our budgeting overall and how we had to use that, how that alleviated some stress in our life. Let's delve in a little bit on that. So to provide just a little bit of detail, one of the things that we do in our overall budget is we make sure that we are setting money aside for our emergency fund, and also trying to make sure that we're paying some costs and some things forward, and we're having money ready for those costs, so that we don't have to take out credit, so that we don't have to worry about where the money is going to come from if we have an emergency, or as we're planning for some of those big purchases. So we save ahead for home improvements. We save ahead for new cars down the road.
Major car things that you need, tires, things like that.
We had one of these instances come up. So let's talk a little bit about kind of some of the background about what's going on and why we're going to have to do what we're doing.
Yes. So we are going to talk about our roof. Welcome to Home Ownership 101. So we got our roof replaced, 10, 15 years ago?
2005.
2005. 5 years ago.
Almost 20 years ago.
5 years ago.
Yeah, 5 years ago.
Our whole roof was replaced. We had some shingle issues here and there. They ended up having to redo the back again. The front wasn't too bad. We've had, I want to say every year after that or so, we've had some shingles that will fall off, patches missing that the company would have to come back and fix. It was just a giant headache, but they always came back and fixed it. You've gone up and put some up, which my Fitbit heartbeat said I was having a heart attack watching him climb up on the ladder to attach our roof, which is a very steep angle for our roof. It's not one of the gentle angles. So you've gone up, nailed a few back in. We just recently had a pretty bad windstorm, thunderstorm, rainstorm, something storm, and a few shingles came down. They were really high towards the peak. Plus, after my almost heart attack watching you on the roof the last time, we're like, okay, we're just going to have someone come in and fix this instead of us trying to do it ourselves.
And so we had, as Christine said, some shingles that have most recently come loose. And So we called the company that our neighbor had used for redoing their roof and said, hey, would you mind just coming out and replacing these shingles because the company that used to do this for us is no longer in business. They said, yeah, sure, we can do that for you. So they got up there and they took a look and they found that all of the shingles on the front side of our house are starting to shift. And this is, again, due to the shoddy workmanship that was done originally, which has caused all of these problems up to this point. And originally, our shingles were supposed to last for 30 years, and they're not even going to last 20 at this point, which is disappointing and upsetting. But that happens. They basically said, like, look, you need to replace your roof at this point. It's not something that we feel good about doing any sort of work on. We can patch it for you, things like that. But in good conscience, and they showed us the pictures, and you can actually see where the shingles are all, essentially off kilter. And so what it boils down to is we were not expecting to have to do this. We were not expecting to have to shell this money
have to pay
out.
for a re-roofing of the whole house.
Right.
So yeah, we thought it was just a quick, someone's going to come in, put some shingles up, touch base, and all that. And so we get that from going, okay, quick, we'll put your shingles up that fell off in a storm, because it happens, to you should probably get your roof re-roofed or you're going to have problems.
They gave us a price quote and they said, hey, if you just want to do the front side of the house, that'll be $2,400. If you want to redo the whole thing, that'll be $4,800. Again, that is not a small pill to swallow, especially when you weren't planning on spending that money.
So this was completely unexpected. But however, we have an emergency fund, which we have been budgeting for and making sure that we maintain that for things that are unexpected that we could take care of and not have to put ourselves in a financial bind or put off taking care of something and having a bigger problem later down the road.
Yeah. And the other thing we do is we also do prepay some of the things. Like we know that we're going to have to replace our cars over the years. And so what we try and do is we try to work that into our budget and save money on the side for that. We also do the same thing for home repairs. We also do the same thing for other things we have to do, like property taxes and things like that. So we work that into our budget so that it smooths out some of these shocks, so that we don't have to experience such a significant amount of pain and go, okay, where are we going to get that money from?
Yeah. And it does, by doing it in slow increments, it makes it less painful. It makes it less overwhelming to be able to be like, okay, out of my paycheck, I'm going to put $100 a month into this account, and that's for anything car repair wise. So when it comes down to needing like new tires, new whatever, I'm not like, crap, I now need like $1,000. I've been slowly saving up, so it's less of a hit.
Yeah. And so we just wanted to share this story with everybody because it is something to help demonstrate the value of having an emergency fund. And even if you can't have that much readily available, if you can at least get to the point where you have $500 or $1,000 to help smooth out some of those shocks, it can make a significant difference in terms of your quality of life and not having to worry about, okay, where am I going to get this money from? Because now I need to replace my tires, and my mode of transportation is vital and critical for me to be able to get to and from work. And so it may represent a little bit of pain in terms of there's other things that we could be spending that money on and there's other things we could be doing, but we value the security that it gives us in being able to weather these types of things and work through these types of things and be able to go, okay, that's what the money is for. And I know sometimes people even talk about, well, how will I know when to use my emergency fund? How will I know to dip in? You'll have some pretty good indicators of where is appropriate and where you should be doing that.
Yeah, and a lot of times you don't think about things breaking. You're like, no, my house is fine. Everything's fine. But when you break it down, I don't know anyone that owns a house that hasn't had some unexpected high price thing go down in their house.
Absolutely. Thinking about what happened to us a few years ago with our basement, where we had water backup that came
up the sewers.
Yeah, back up from the storm drains and things like that. And we couldn't have predicted that, but thankfully we had known that it was a possibility, and we had insurance for that, and it was covered. And luckily, it covered most of our expenses for that, but it certainly could have been much worse, and it became that indicator for us that we actually needed to increase our coverage on that. Because had we lost some of our other things like our furnace, we easily would have had to dip into our emergency fund to cover some of those things rather than our insurance covering it, because it just wouldn't have been enough.
Correct.
Yeah. And so, again, we budget for this and we keep this in mind as we're saving our money, and that is all a part of our budget. And let's talk a little bit about that. Let's delve into your budget. Let's talk about how we need to maybe rework your budget a little bit so that you know where your money is going and you can do that intentionally. So you've had a recent life event where you need to re-examine your finances. Want to talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, so I left a job, took a part-time job, and with the intent of and knowing that I was going to go full-time, unexpected things happened. I am now going full-time a full month and a half sooner than expected,
Which is great.
which is awesome. So now I get to reevaluate the budget that I was working from, my part-time budget, kind of see what it's going to look like now that I'm making more money, and kind of making sure that I am doing the best I can to set myself up in budgeting, saving, and spending.
Absolutely. And so there's a couple different ways that you can approach setting up your budget. There's a couple different ways that you can think about how you go through the process of setting up a budget. You can start with how much money you have coming in, and then you can then dole those things out to the various different liabilities that you have in the various different places where you want those things to go. Or you can start with where your money needs to go and then work from there. Now, in your particular case, you have money that you're making right now, but it is still that part-time money. So you don't know exactly what your paycheck is going to look like on a dollar by dollar basis from like what you're going to be making and your taxes and everything like that at this point. So that's still a bit of an unknown for you, right?
Yeah. So right now I am working the part-time hours, and then because of the position, the pay is less. So I will be, so my paychecks have been averaging, and I've been really lucky, I've been getting extra hours, have been averaging anywhere from 40 to 60 hours a paycheck, but less money. So now it'll be going up to 80 hours a paycheck and a considerable increase in pay.
Okay. So what we're going to do, because you know a lot of your liabilities, what you have to cover in terms of the various different things that you want to go through and be directing money towards, we're going to build that out. And then we're going to give you a little bit of an option at the end of that based on how you might flex once the money starts coming in. So we'll start with creating that first budget. And then once you start to see what the reality
What it really looks like?
Yeah, what it really looks like and how much money you're really getting, then you can start to adjust some of those things. But the good news is you know that you're going to be making enough at least to cover your liabilities. And then you'll have some flexibility in where you want to direct the rest of the money afterwards.
Yeah, that works out well because my first full-time, full-pay paycheck isn't going to be for about 2 weeks or so. So we'll have a little time for me to kind of like poke at it, tweak at it, and see kind of what I need to do.
Yeah. And the good news is you also had gone through this exercise back when you made the switch so that you knew that you were going to be able to cover some things. But now you're going to have a little bit more flexibility. But let's confirm what some of those numbers look like and how you need to plan for those things in your budgeting going forward so that you're being intentional with your money. You know where it's going. You know what you want it to be doing.
Yes.
So let's first talk. Do you want to start with spending or saving? Because that's another option. Some people like to say, hey, let's start with the places that I have to spend first. And some people say, I want to prioritize saving. And then I'll figure out what some of the other things are that I potentially are spending on, starting with the necessities and then going into some of the niceties. So which way do you want to go? Do you want to start with saving or do you want to start with spending?
I want to go with spending because I have bills that I have to hit that need to be paid. So I want to get those out of the way. And then kind of go from there.
Yeah. And by the way, just for folks, if you're not comfortable with the name budget, I like you're being able to call this the spending and saving plan because that's really what you're doing. And that's really what a budget should be helping you do is how you spend and how you save. So let's talk a little bit about how you need to spend and where you need to spend. So let's talk about things you have to spend on. Let's talk about the things that are essentially non-negotiables. So what are some of those non-negotiables that you have right now?
Gas and electric.
Okay. And that's like
home
gas, right?
Home gas, home electric. My cell phone.
Okay.
The water bill. The trash bill. And then this is iffy. I have Patreon. because that is something that if needed to be, it could be cut back dramatically, which I did do while I was part-time, but it is still something that I get value out of that I want to make sure that I'm doing monthly.
So what I would say is, and don't get me wrong, we love all the people that we patronize through Patreon and other venues and things like that, but that is a choice. And that is something where like spending on your gas and electric and spending on your cell phone and your water bill and your trash bill, those are non-negotiables.
I did qualify it before I said it.
You did. But I just want it for everybody else who's listening that they understand that, you know, that is one of those delineation points where you can start to think about if you need to flex. Like there is clearly a difference between utilities, things that allow you to continue to like be able to live, and then the things that you enjoy. Now, you certainly can prioritize some of those things differently, and I'm sure we'll talk about prioritization of where we're spending some of that money in terms of like Patreon and those types of things. But the must-haves should be first. So is there any other...
My car gas.
There you go. Thank you.
It is in the list over here.
Yep.
I forgot about it too when I first started doing my budget.
Yep, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I was asking is if there's any other maintenance type things that you have that are those expenditures and that you have that are recurring that way. So for those of you who are listening, you'll notice that, you know, there's a lot of things that Christine's not listing off, which are things like, you know, car insurance or home insurance or those types of things. With the way that we choose to split our bills, we choose to have me take on some of the responsibility and Christine take on some of the responsibility. And we just find that it's easier to keep our finances separate that way rather than pooling. Both ways can work. Absolutely. It's just, that's the way that works best for us. That's the way that we're most comfortable with. And we've done this for 20 some years at this point. So, for those of you who may be going, well, what about your car insurance or what about your home insurance? Like those things are covered. Those are in my budget.
They're just not what I'm responsible for.
Correct.
But we also do at the same time help each other out. They'll say like times got tight and I'm like, hey, dude, you got like an extra $50 to help me with this or whatnot. So it's not that it's mine and yours, but it's just what we break down, what we're most responsible for.
Correct. But if we need help from each other, we certainly can do that from time to time.
Yep.
So, okay. So we've got gas and electric for the house, cell phone, water, trash bill. Yep. And then the gasoline for your car.
Yes.
Anything else that we want to put in your spending budget? I heard you say Patreon.
Patreon.
Anything else? Do you have any other subscriptions that you're managing? Like, I know you had HBO Max for a while.
Yep. Nope. I cut a lot of my subscriptions were cut when I went to part-time.
Okay. So that, just as an example, that would be another example of a spending that is something that's flexible. And that's actually really cool to hear you talk about, hey, that was something that I chose to flex on and I chose to get rid of because we weren't getting a lot of value out of that. And I knew that it was something that I needed to flex on in terms of maybe bringing some of my spending down a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about gas and electric. How much is that?
Because it's flexible, I don't do this the monthly set payment. I go based by use because it works best for us. So I averaged $75 a month for gas, $75 a month for electric. Okay. That way on the times when the gas is higher because it's winter, the electric tends to be lower. Okay. And then the summer when the electric is higher because of the air conditioning, the gas tends to be lower. So I found $75 each per month is a good buffer to help me budget to make sure that the flexibility is there.
Okay, cool. And then your cell phone, how much is that?
$35.
Okay. On a monthly basis?
Yes.
Okay. So are all of these numbers, just to clarify, are all these numbers worked into a monthly basis?
Yes.
Okay. Because I know some of the bills are not monthly, they're like quarterly.
Yes, water and trash, we'll get to like that.
Okay, perfect, because those are next. I just wanted to clarify for folks who may be wondering, like, hey, what if you have things that are quarterly? How do you account for those? So let's talk about that. That's perfect. Yep. So we have water and the trash bill. Those are both...
They're both quarterly. They
okay.
tend to offset, which is also great. So my water, I'm estimating right now at $35 a month.
Okay.
That might have to be flexible once I start watering the garden more if it doesn't rain a lot.
Okay.
But that usually puts me right like over what the quarterly water and sewage bill would
Okay.
be.
So basically, you're saving a little bit more in most cases, and you give yourself a little bit of a buffer in there just in case if it goes more.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And then trash, $20 a month.
Okay. And so that's 60 a quarter essentially.
Yeah, and that's a little bit over. It's like 50 something.
Mm-hmm.
So that I just round up a little, and that gives me the buffer. And then if not, that gives me extra money just in case I need to move it elsewhere, just in case.
Mm-hmm. Now your car gas, moving into that, you're probably doing that on a weekly basis where you're filling up, and
Weekly, yep.
But then you can just multiply what that cost is by 4, and that gives you a rough idea as far as how much you need to be saving on a monthly basis.
Yes.
So you were probably driving a little bit less because you were part-time. Is there any adjustments you need to make based on your calculations there?
I estimated a little more. I am driving more.
Okay.
But it is shorter distance than I drove to my last full-time job.
Okay.
So I took what I did for my last full-time job and estimated it a little differently based on it's like 10 miles closer.
Okay.
So I am putting it at $120 a month.
$120 a month. Okay. So that basically works out to $30 a week.
$40 a week? Okay, $160.
And this is why we go through and we write all these things down. So, but yeah, real easy to say. Yeah. Hey, $40 a week for gas. And then times 4 weeks, that gives you, brings everything in line with your budget for the month of $160.
Yep.
Okay. So that covers gas and electric for the house, cell phone, water, trash, and car.
Yes.
Did I miss anything as far as anything that is required for you to make sure that you cover?
No.
Okay.
I feel like that was a trick question. Like, you're going to be like, you're going to say no, and then I'll be like, how about this bill? And I'll be like, oh.
No, the reason why I'm asking that is because sometimes we do forget stuff. And it is through going through that and trying to readdress it and asking that question again that we uncover one of those things. Now, we're doing this just as we're talking here. For the folks who are listening, if you're looking for a way to double check yourself and make sure you've incorporated everything, one of the things you can do is go take a look at your bank statements and take a look at like your checking accounts and your savings accounts and use that as a guide to know where your money is going, to see where you're spending on. And you can use that to determine all of your different categories that are your musts and also where you'd like to be spending money when you're spending.
I also do something very old school is every month I write down what I pay in bills in a notebook because I have a lot of variable bills so it's easy for me. I just pull the notebook out and I have a whole tracing of what I paid, when they're due, and kind of look back that to help me budget and then see where I could adjust.
Yeah, being able to see trends like that can really help you understand like, hey, where's my money going? Is it going to the right places? Do I see that there's going to be trends so that I need to adjust, like what you were talking earlier about the gas and electric? They flip-flop based on the season, so they balance each other out. But if you didn't have both gas and electric, what you could see that are doing something like that, what you could see is okay, hey, if I'm using gas and my furnace is running off of gas, and I live in a cold area, in the winter months, that gas bill is going to go up. I should plan accordingly for that, right? Same thing if you are, in a hotter area and things like that, and you're going to be running your electric a lot more in the summertime, you should anticipate that your air conditioner is going to be running more often and just creating an increased cost there. So cool. All right. So we got Patreon. How much is your Patreon on a monthly basis?
On a monthly basis for all my Patreon, it is $60 a month.
$60 a month. Okay, cool. And I'm assuming you get a lot of value out of being able to support your various different friends and their endeavors and those types of things.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
A wide variety. I listen between watching and listening to content. It provides a lot of my entertainment.
Yeah.
Which is why I kind of cut out the HBO Max or certain things, because I actually go to the content that I do, Patreon or things like that, way more than sitting and watching a TV.
Yeah. And so that's a good place where you identified, one, where I could flex a little bit or where I maybe needed to flex a little bit, but two, also being able to understand your priority and what you value in terms of what you're getting from that spending perspective or the personal value that you get out of that. being able to say, yes, I enjoy watching those shows or things like that, but I also enjoy supporting my friends, seeing the content and supporting them in their content creation. And I value that higher. And so if I'm going to have to cut something out, if I'm going to have to change something, like, no offense, HBO Max, like, you guys make great content.
They're not hurting for money though. They're not. Yeah.
But yeah, and there's definitely a personal relationship that you have with the people that you are, giving money to through Patreon and things like that, and supporting creators that way. And so you prize that much more highly than you do, again, maybe still creators, but creators that you're not as close with, and creators that you don't have personal relationships with. And that's cool. It's good to be able to know that. And again, that goes back to how you're spending your money intentionally. So super cool. Anything else on the spending side? Anything else that you have that costs you money, things like that?
Not on a regular basis. Occasionally, I don't like to go shopping, so I don't buy clothes.
Okay.
Ooh, my haircuts.
Yep. Okay. Haircuts, how much are those?
$50.
Okay. How often do you get those?
Every 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
Depending on how long I want my hair to be or how annoying it is.
So can I make a recommendation?
Yeah.
Because you're probably including like tip in that and things like that. If you just round up to 60, and then if that's every 3 months or every 2 months, what would you prefer? 2 months or 3 months?
3 months.
3 months. Okay. So then you should basically be doing $20 a month.
Okay.
So have that money set aside somewhere at $20 a month, being able to say, hey, everything that I do there. I thought of one, and I'm not trying to out you or make you feel bad.
Is it fast food?
Fast food and snacks.
Snacks. I always
Snacks.
have snacks. Well, this is
Right.
how I like to get a lot of my snacks.
Yeah.
Hey, when you're going to the grocery store, can you pick up some mac and cheese for me?
Yes, but there have been plenty of times where I've been in your car
and
I open up the center console to grab a quarter for Aldi, and lo and behold, there are just snacks galore in the car. So do you need to budget for your snacks?
I probably should. Actually, I should also be snacking less, but you never know when you're going to get hangry. I need to have food in my car at all times.
Yeah, look, again, like I said, I'm not trying to shame here. What I'm trying to do is we're just trying to build the budget. And if that's a part of your spending, which I think that it is.
It is.
Like,
I would say
you should be able to have some snacks money to be able to buy your
money.
snacks.
Snacks.
Right? So let's add snacks money.
Snacks. SCHNACX.
You could do X. I did CKS.
Okay.
So yeah, but I definitely did the
Snacks.
SCHNACKS.
Okay,
Snacks.
snacks.
Yeah. So what do you think? $20 a month? $30 a month?
I'll go 20.
20? Okay.
I don't actually buy snacks that often because I
Okay.
buy snacks when I go shopping, like Target or so, and I don't go that often.
Okay.
Unless I'm like starving and I'm desperate, and then I buy it when I get gas.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd go 20.
Okay. Yeah. And again, there's no judgment. It's just this is what you do, and we're just trying to account for it right now so that you can have snacks money when you need snacks
My
money.
hidden snacks in my car.
That's right.
I'd love to see you be like, "Whoop, what the? Why are there cookies in here?
Yes.
Because cookies are delicious.
Yeah, because cookies are delicious. And then I had to resist having your cookies and make sure that you had your snacks still there when you need them because they were yours.
Make sure you replenish any snacks that you take. Or
That's
let me
right.
know.
That's right.
Because you don't want to see me when I go get a snack and there's no snacks in my center console.
No. Then next thing you know, you're hangry and Christine is raging Hulk. So
Yes. And then I don't have any snack budget money left because I didn't know and I didn't budget for it.
So one of the things we want to do now is we want to take a look. I'm going to pull out the old calculator. It's going to be a very exciting time. So
When you're older, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket to be able to solve these math problems.
I know, right? It's crazy,
Oh,
isn't
yeah,
it?
math teacher, take that.
Yeah. Math teachers, we love you, but you couldn't have foreseen the fact that I was going to literally have a calculator that is in my pocket all the time. So, totaling all of that up, believe it or not, that is actually $500 even. So, mathing it out, you know that your liabilities, everything that you want to be spending on every month, is going to be $500.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's good. Now, let's talk a little bit about saving.
There's a whole other category I didn't even think of, like my car repairs and car things like that.
Okay. So,
Should that be in our saving? So I should budget that as a saving, not budget that as an expenditure?
I budget those as saving things.
Okay.
You can certainly treat that as a spending thing if you're pre-spending on some of these things. But in our particular case, you're saving that money ahead of time, and technically that money is still flexible.
So technically, if I don't save that $50 a month for my car, it's not going to make me have an issue.
Correct.
Except for down the road when I need that extra $50.
Correct.
Okay.
And that goes back to what we were talking earlier about how we like to save for later expenses later on. That is a part of saving. That's how I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see where some people want to think about that as spending, and I'm basically prepaying some of those things. That certainly works if you want to consider that spending.
Mm-hmm.
But I also treat saving just as important as I do spending, and I, in some cases, actually treat that even higher than I do than spending. And I will prioritize saving in some cases over spending on things where I have flexibility where I don't need to spend.
Well, I think savings is easy for me now that I've taken your idea of it just comes directly out of my paycheck and goes to this fund or this fund. So I don't even see it
Right.
to spend it.
Makes a big difference. So let's talk about, so as a part of your saving, you're saving on car expenses, like repairs and things like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. For saving retirement, so it'll be a 403B that I'll be in.
Okay.
Then
else?
also an IRA.
Okay.
And then I also want to save up for trips and other things. I have a friend that's going to be turning 50 shortly.
Uh-huh.
In the next few years, and she wants to do a big trip, and I would like to go along with her.
Yeah. I'm gonna put that down as travel big trip.
Okay.
And so that's another good example of where we do split some of that. I usually cover a lot of what we do from a travel perspective. But if we've got something that we want to prepay in some of the expenses and be able to save up for that ahead of time, that's makes a lot of sense.
Well, then I like to, if it's a joint thing that you and I are going on, that's one thing. But if it's I'm going by myself, I for
Prefer to cover
a personal pride type thing, I would prefer to cover it myself instead of asking you to pay for something that you're not going to partake in. But that's just me.
That's fair. Okay, so we have your car expense, we have your 403B, we have the IRA, and we have your travel, the big trip that we want to be saving for. Okay, so tell me a little bit about how you want to approach that, or how you're thinking about each one of those things in terms of saving up money. What's the prioritization of some of those things? And then if you have some idea as far as what you want to be targeting from an outcomes perspective, or if you have some idea as far as how much you want to put towards that.
So what I'm kind of doing is basing it off of my previous full-time job, because the hours and the pay are about the same, give or take a little.
Okay.
So I am starting my budgeting basing off of estimates based off of what I was previously doing when I was full-time.
So how much were you putting towards your IRA before?
$600.
$600 every month?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. And the goal is to try to max that out, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. And then car expense?
$300.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about the 403B and the travel big trip kind of thing. I know in your previous job, you didn't have the option of being able to do a 401k or 403B.
Correct.
And also as you said, the travel big trip thing is something new that you want to be doing, stuff like that. So tell me a little bit about your goals there. What do you want to try to accomplish for each one of those?
So for the 403B, I really want to max that out. I want to get as much into investing into my future, paying for time to have freedom.
Okay.
So I don't actually know what that's going to look like. I forgot that I didn't even have that as an option in my last job because I was putting so much money towards my IRA.
Yep.
So I honestly don't know. I want to try to max it out. I don't know what actually that's going to look like.
Okay. If you want to try to max it out, which is a huge and massive goal that we can work towards, but it is possible, just knowing that we're going to be working on a little bit shorter time scale. That's where we may have to take a look at some of the flexibility depending on your pay going forward and how you might be directing that money depending on what it looks like.
Yep.
With the amount of time that we have left in the year, the max is 23,000. So how we would start to work that out to determine that is we would take the 23,000 and then we would, if you wanted to max it out, we would actually divide that by the number of paychecks that you have left in the year, which I don't know what that is off the top of your head. But let's assume that you were even just starting in June.
Okay.
Right? And so what you would do is you would actually divide that by your 13
so that'd be
paychecks.
6 months of
That would be 6 months. So what we can do is you can actually say, hey, how close can I actually get? And this is something where you might potentially want to take a look at that and say, okay, what is of the higher importance to me? Is it more important to me to be able to get the money into my retirement savings, or is it more important for me to be able to save up for the travel big trip?
Mm-hmm.
However, just to give you an idea as far as how much you would have to be saving,
Yep.
if you were to start from July to December
Mm-hmm.
and those 13 paychecks,
Mm-hmm.
you would need to be saving $1,769.
A paycheck?
That's correct.
Okay, well,
So,
there goes my plans.
so we may have to adjust that a little bit. We'll have to see exactly what that looks like. But I like where your head is at, and you do have a little bit more time
Mm-hmm.
overall. So we might not be able to get quite to the 23,000,
Mm-hmm.
but we might be able to get you close depending on what you want to save and
So-
how much you want to save and those types of things.
So here's a question. If I had to choose between maxing out the IRA or my 403B, where would you think to put the money?
So that gets to be a bit of a complicated question depending on what's available from an investment perspective and those types of things. Normally, the way to think about that is you would want to go into your 401k or your 403b up to whatever your match is.
Mm-hmm. So then
And-
the IRA would be the extra.
And then the IRA would be extra. Now, I think with your option, because you're coming in as a new employee, you probably don't get your match right away. And that's
No.
something that you'll have to figure out. You may be on a delayed match.
Yes, I am.
And so since you're on a delayed match,
It's not like I'm missing out on any money if I don't.
you won't be missing out on any additional money where you would prioritize that because you would basically be getting the free money that they would be
Yeah.
matching on. So at that point, it effectively makes it about equal because you do have a Roth option in your 403b with your new company that you're going to be working for. Some people would say, oh, I would prefer the IRA because it's in a separate account and I have all the options that I get that I might not have depending on how good or not good
what the
my
program,
401k.
what they offer,
Correct.
where you could pick and choose your own IRA.
Correct. I can select from all the potential investments based on where I have that, as opposed to if I don't necessarily have a good 401k or 403b set of options, then I may not have as much flexibility as I like to. And then at that point, I'm going to prioritize the IRA and get that maxed out first.
Okay.
The one key difference is that with your employer, you do have to have it pulled from your paycheck, or at least in your particular case, that you have to have it pulled from your paycheck. So you can only do so much over the time period, depending on how much you can actually be pulling from each one of those pay periods, things like that, to try to get the money in there.
Okay.
So that's something to consider in terms of how you balance these things out, of being able to say, okay, I can take a look at this and I can say, I want to be able to put this much in because I can weather that much. And I'm doing it over the period, especially if you're doing a company match. And if that company match doesn't have any sort of true up or anything along those lines at the end of the year or throughout the different quarters. Some companies, like mine, you actually have to pay every pay period. And that's where the match happens. And they don't do any sort of true up or anything like that at the end. So it behooves me to split mine all the way across the entire year and make sure that I am putting
Each
at least the
paycheck is
matching
given-
percentage in every paycheck.
Okay.
So for you, we'll have to take a look at what your capabilities are and how much you might be able to do. And I might be able to help out with that a little bit if I can maybe pick up on some of the other things and give you a little bit more flexibility in your money, because that helps us with our overall outcomes that we're working towards.
Within that, I could always play like, do I really need the $300 a month on my car? I just put tires on my car, massive things. Could I cut that a tad, not a lot, but can I move that around to help catch up in certain areas if need be?
And you also know that you're not necessarily saving up at this point to replace your car because that car is new to you.
Yep.
And you just acquired that car, so you're planning on having that car for a longer period of time.
Yeah. So now I'm just saving up for maintenance and different things that'll happen that need to be paid for.
Yeah. So tell me about this big trip. When is that happening?
I believe in 2 years.
Okay, so you got a 2-year time horizon. So you got 24 months on that.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you want to have saved up by the time you get there?
I don't know because we have to talk about in depth. Lots of things have been weighed out. Right now, going to Spain
Okay.
is an option.
Sounds great.
So then that takes into account length, trip time, things like that. And I haven't, it just got started talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really have anything that I started kind of planning for, breaking things down.
Okay.
Because I don't know if I could get miles for airline tickets or things like that.
Mm-hmm. So what I would recommend is I would recommend at least start to get some idea of what you think that looks like and how much money, what your target amount is that you're going to be trying to save for.
Mm-hmm.
And then figure out how you want to prioritize that versus potentially some of the things that you want to do in the 403B. So, for example, like what you were saying about the car expense, you may be able to say, hey, because I'm not sure, I do want to start putting some money to the side and I want to start putting some money away.
Yep.
But maybe I still prioritize getting money into the investments right now until I know a little bit more about what's going to be happening. Now, obviously, you'll know a little bit more about, one, how much money you're making, and then two, how much you want to be investing going forward, those kinds of things, probably in the next month or two.
Yes.
And you'll start to have some better idea as far as how some of this shakes out. Plus, if you start to have more conversations with your friend about, okay, hey, what are we thinking? And kind of what's my level of investment? You start to get some idea as far as how much money you want to be able to save up. But just to give you an idea, if you start saving $100 a month, that's going to be $2,400
Yep.
at the end of that 2 years. Will that be enough for you?
I have no idea. Probably not.
Okay. So good chance that you probably want to increase that. You probably come up with at least a rough idea that you could start with.
Mm-hmm.
So even being able to say, okay, well, what about 5,000 as a starting point?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if I start out with 5,000 as a starting point, somewhere in the neighborhood of about $275 a month over the next 2 years would get you there.
Okay.
So that would potentially be a starting point for you if you wanted to smooth that out and if you wanted basically it to be essentially a linear investment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you certainly could go shorter now, knowing that you potentially ramp that up later if you want to. And as you learn more about what the trip looks like, you could start to make some adjustments based on some of the other things you were talking about. Do I need to be putting as much into my car expenses? Do I potentially get a windfall of money? Maybe I get a bonus at work or something like that.
I won't having to be catching up on my 403B.
Right. And so, yeah, down the road, I may not need to try to do as much investment in 2025 as I'm going to be trying to do in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, I can now smooth that out over a longer period of time and I can redirect some of that money into my travel big trip savings rather than having it needing to go into the 403B. Absolutely.
Okay.
So I think that at least gives you a starting point in terms of your budgeting. It gives you an idea as far as what, you know, where your spending is going. You know, you've got some saving options. You know, you're going to be putting some money into some of those things. You know that you're going to be getting back into your IRA savings. You know that you got your car expenses, although you just had some, so you may be able to dial back on that a little bit. And then the big unknown is how much really you're going to be able to comfortably be able to get into the 403B.
Yes.
But I think you'll discover that pretty early on. And maybe even we can talk about that when we get into the end of May or June. We can revisit that and talk about how your budget's been adjusted.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Cool. My head is now hurting.
But do you feel a little bit more, even though your head is hurting a little bit?
I do.
But do you feel a little bit more confident? Do you have a little bit more intention about where your money is going? And does it help you in terms of understanding where some of this stuff is going to go?
Yeah, I do. It is helpful. I am a person that needs to see concrete numbers. So once I start getting those full-time paychecks, it'll be easier.
Mm-hmm. And one of the other things that you'll be able to do is you'll be able to say, okay, now I know how much money needs to go into each one of these accounts. Essentially being able to say, I have a place where that money is going and I know it's there. It has a purpose. It's doing work for me in that particular way. And it'll all be automated, like what you were talking about earlier, where once everything's automated and it's just going where you want it to go, it just eliminates a lot of that
That
friction.
is the best thing. I think the one thing with the automation, because you're the one that started convincing me to do that, was I remember something came up and I don't look in those accounts. Like they're separate they're even a separate bank from where my main checking is from.
Right.
So I remember something happened and I went, oh my gosh, I don't know. And then I pulled up the account and went, oh, I have that much money. Like, it was surprising how fast it built up. And I never, because it comes out of my paycheck. I don't pay attention to it.
Right.
So it was kind of nice to have that there and be like, oh, I didn't feel the pinch, but whew, I'm so glad that money is right there now.
Yeah. Yet another reason why we have that money available and we budget for it accordingly. So it smooths those types of things out.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Cool.
Every episode, we like to take a moment to reflect back and talk about what filled our spirit this week. So, Christine, what filled your spirit this week?
I have 2 things that filled my spirit this week.
Okay.
First one being I got my braces off.
Yeah. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. I still have a few more things to go, but I do not have metal in my mouth anymore. The second one was that I went bird watching with some friends, which is the first time I've actually gone out with the intention of bird watching. Yeah. And it was pretty cool. I got to see some different things. I saw my first Baltimore Oriole in the real life and not the baseball player, the actual bird.
Wow.
What filled your spirit this week?
So what filled my spirit this week? So as a part of my work, they had an in-person event, and it was 4 years since I've done a presentation in front of like a large audience. And I really just enjoy being back in that space and getting an opportunity to do a session that was an interactive session in person. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the fact that my company has embraced work from home and hybrid and flexibility, and that they really try to make sure that they provide a great environment. But there really is something about being in person sometimes for some of these sessions. And so it really just filled my spirit to get back in there, and people even commented afterwards. They're like, wow, you seem really energized by being in person, and you really seemed in your element. And I did. I'll be frank, I really enjoyed actually being back in person. So while I really appreciate the fact that we have the flexibility and we have the ability to have people work from home and work in hybrid environments, it was really nice to go in and do that presentation with the team and do the session as a part of that in person. It just hits a little different.
And that's everything we have to talk about this week. What is on deck for next?
Next week, we're going to talk about learnings from my April experiment. So I've been running a little bit of an experiment on myself and learning a little bit about how I work. I need 1 more week to be able to get a little bit more data, a little bit more information. So we'll delve in on that next week with that data, talk a little bit about that. So we hope you join us then. And in the meantime, we hope you live a spirited life. The topics and information on A Spirited Life should not be taken as financial advice and should be considered for entertainment purposes only.